At JFK International Airport in New York, amidst the bustling crowds and relentless flights, Michael Hayes and his German Shepherd, Rex, embark on what seems like just another day of work. But in the tense atmosphere of the security checkpoint, a resounding bark sets the stage for a gripping and emotional story about instinct, trust, and the fragile line between life and death. A pregnant woman, a dog that won't look away, and a bold decision will change everything. Are you ready to dive into this story? Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and leave a comment sharing where you're tuning in from. We'd love to know which corner of the world you're joining us from. John F. Kennedy International Airport, New York. Tuesday morning, April 15th. The air is thick with the scent of Starbucks coffee, the monotonous drone of boarding announcements, and the clatter of suitcase wheels rolling across the marble floor. The security checkpoint at Terminal 4 is a chaotic hive of activity, with passengers shoulder to shoulder, eyes glued to their watches, desperate to navigate the endless line before missing their flights. The baggage scanners hum rhythmically, and TSA agents in their navy blue uniforms move with precision, their sharp, practiced gazes betraying the instincts of those who operate on the razor's edge between safety and danger. Amid the frenetic rush, a piercing sound slices through the din, the resounding bark of a dog. Not a random yelp, but a relentless, forceful series of barks, as if shouting an urgent warning that cannot be ignored. All eyes instantly turn toward the end of the security line. There, a German Shepherd with a glossy black and tan coat stands growling, ears erect, eyes locked onto a pregnant woman. The dog, named Rex, is a legend within JFK's airport security team, with 5 years of flawless service. From detecting drugs hidden in shoe soles to once sniffing out an illegal electronic device in carry-on luggage, Rex has never once led the TSA astray. The woman, in her early 30s, dressed in a simple gray sweater, stands frozen. Her face betrays confusion, not from the attention, but because Rex refuses to budge from her side. Her hands rest lightly on her belly, as if shielding the unborn child within. She doesn't scream or flee, she simply lowers her head, her eyes flickering toward Rex with an emotion that's hard to pin down. Not quite fear, but a kind of resignation, as if she herself doesn't understand what's happening. "What's going on?" a passenger whispers, but no one answers. Rex's barking drowns out every other sound. Within less than a minute, the overcrowded security checkpoint falls eerily silent, as if someone hit pause on the entire world. TSA agents converge from all directions. The overhead announcements cut off, and the flow of people through the scanners grinds to a halt. No one says it aloud, but everyone knows. When a working dog like Rex barks relentlessly, it's no small matter. Michael Hayes, the security supervisor for Terminal 4, stands a few meters away, his piercing gaze scanning the scene. At 40, Hayes is a former military man who's been with the TSA for over a decade. He's no stranger to pressure or split-second decisions. But today, it's not Rex's barking that gives him pause. It's the look in the dog's eyes. Rex isn't aggressive or angry, as he would be when detecting contraband. His gaze is fierce, almost desperate, as if racing against something invisible to everyone else. "Mike, do we check her?" A young agent, Sarah, whispers beside him, her hand gripping her radio tightly. Hayes doesn't respond immediately. He studies the woman, then Rex. She shows no obvious signs of suspicion. No averted gaze, no sweating, no erratic movements. Her bag has already passed through the scanner, cleared without issue. But Rex isn't letting it go, and Hayes knows that in this line of work, ignoring the instincts of a dog like Rex is a deadly mistake. Murmurs begin to ripple through the crowd. A man in a suit, clearly in a rush, mutters about missing his flight. A mother holding a toddler steps back, her eyes filled with unease, but no one dares speak up loudly. At an airport, where everything is governed by procedure and technology, the sight of a working dog issuing a continuous alert casts a heavy pall, as if an invisible bomb is ticking down. Hayes approaches the woman. "Ma'am, I'm Michael Hayes, TSA. Can you tell me your name and the purpose of your trip today?" His voice is calm, but his eyes never leave Rex, who continues to growl a few steps away. She looks up, her voice soft but clear. "Emily Carter, I'm flying to San Francisco to visit family." She pauses, her hands trembling slightly. "I don't know why he's barking. I haven't done anything wrong." Rex steps forward, barking louder, causing Emily to flinch. Hayes raises a hand to calm the dog, but a question flashes in his mind. If it's not drugs or a dangerous object, what is Rex detecting? That question, like a bolt of lightning, awakens a gut feeling he's never faced in his 10 years on the job. The atmosphere in Terminal 4 at JFK Airport is now oppressively heavy, as if time itself is crawling. Rex, the German Shepherd, continues his sharp, echoing barks, interspersed with low growls, his eyes locked onto Emily Carter. The pregnant woman stands motionless, her hands shielding her belly, her face pale under the harsh fluorescent lights. Around her, the crowd of passengers edges back slightly, their hushed whispers forming a faint hum of curiosity and unease. Michael Hayes, the TSA security supervisor, feels the weight of every gaze, from passengers, colleagues, and, most intensely, Rex's unwavering stare. The decision he makes in the next few seconds could be the line between safety and catastrophe, or between justice and a public relations firestorm. Hayes crouches slightly, his hand hovering near Rex's collar, though he doesn't touch the dog. "Easy, boy," he mutters, more to steady himself than to calm Rex. The dog's ears twitch, but its focus doesn't waver. Hayes straightens and turns to Emily. "Ma'am, we need to take this to a private screening room. It's standard procedure. Are you okay with that?" Emily nods, her lips pressed tightly together. "Yes, I don't understand." Her voice is soft, almost swallowed by the tense air. She glances at Rex, and for a fleeting moment, an emotion flickers in her eyes. Not fear, but a quiet resignation, as if she senses something is wrong but can't name it. Sarah, a young TSA agent, steps forward, her voice low. "Mike, the scanner showed nothing. Her bag's clean. No metal, no prohibited items. You sure about this?" Her tone carries a mix of respect and doubt. She's still new, learning to trust instinct over machines. Hayes doesn't respond immediately. He knows the stakes. If they escalate this without evidence, they risk lawsuits, negative press, or worse, a viral video of a pregnant woman harassed by the TSA. But if they ignore Rex, a dog with a perfect track record, and something goes wrong, the consequences are unimaginable. "Check her ID," Hayes says curtly, nodding to Sarah, "and have the team clear this area." He turns back to Emily. "Ma'am, please follow me." His voice is firm, but not harsh. Emily picks up her small gray backpack, clutching it to her chest, and follows, her steps slow but steady. Rex trails right behind, his nose mere inches from her heels, growling softly. The crowd parts like the sea, their murmurs growing louder as Emily disappears behind a frosted glass door. Inside the private screening room, the space is cold and sterile, white walls, a metal table, and a single chair. Two female TSA agents join Hayes, their faces professional but tense. Emily sits, her hands clasped on her lap, her breathing shallow. Rex is kept outside the door, but his presence is unmistakable. Through the small window, Hayes sees the dog pacing, eyes fixed on the room. This isn't normal. Rex doesn't pace. When he detects something, he sits, alert, and waits for a command. This urgency, this restlessness, it's something new. One of the agents, Linda, begins a pat-down, her movements careful but thorough. "Ma'am, I'm just checking for anything that might have triggered the dog. You feeling okay?" she asks, her voice gentle. Emily nods weakly. "I'm fine, just tired. It's been a long morning." But her voice trembles and her hands drift back to her belly, lingering there. Linda exchanges a glance with Hayes. Nothing in Emily's clothing or bag raises any flags. The handheld scanner beeps negative, yet Rex's growling continues, now mixed with a faint whine that sends a chill down Hayes' spine. "Mike," Linda says quietly, stepping aside. "There's nothing. No drugs, no weapons. Could be a false alert. Pregnancy can mess with a dog's senses, right? Hormones or something?" Hayes doesn't answer. He looks at Emily, who is now gripping the edge of the table, her knuckles white. Her face is paler than before, a thin sheen of sweat glistening on her forehead. Something is wrong. He's seen enough suspects to recognize guilt, shifty eyes, fidgeting, excuses. Emily doesn't have those signs. What she has is exhaustion, a kind of fatigue that goes beyond a long day of travel. Hayes steps outside, where Rex is still pacing. "What do you see, boy?" he mutters, crouching to meet the dog's gaze. Rex's eyes are intense, almost pleading, and for the first time in years, Hayes feels a pang of doubt. Not in Rex, but in himself. He recalls a training session from years ago, a lecture by a K9 expert at Quantico. The instructor mentioned rare cases where dogs detected medical issues, cancer, seizures, even internal bleeding, through subtle changes in body odor. It was anecdotal, not part of TSA protocol. Hayes had dismissed it as a tall tale. Until now. Back in the room, Emily's condition is deteriorating. Her breathing quickens, her hands pressing tightly against her belly. I don't feel good, she whispers, her voice barely audible. Linda rushes to her side, checking her pulse. Mike, her heart rate's spiking. We need to call medical. Hayes doesn't hesitate. He grabs his radio. This is Hayes, T4 Security. Get a medical team to private screening room 3, immediately. Possible emergency. His voice is steady, but his mind races. If this isn't a security issue, then what is it? And why is Rex, a dog trained to detect bombs and drugs, reacting as if his life depends on it? As the radio crackles with confirmation, Hayes glances through the window at Rex. The German Shepherd has stopped pacing and now sits, staring directly at him. It's not the alert posture for a find, it's something else, a desperate urgency, something profoundly human. Hayes feels a knot tighten in his chest. He made the call to bring Emily in here, despite clean scans and his team's doubts. If he's wrong, he's in for serious trouble. But if he's right, he doesn't dare finish the thought. The door bursts open as the airport medical team rushes in, their bags clattering. A paramedic kneels beside Emily, checking her vitals. Blood pressure's dropping fast, he says, his tone clipped. Weak pulse. We need to get her to a hospital now. He glances at Hayes. What happened? Is she injured? Hayes shakes his head. No injuries. The dog flagged her. She was fine until a few minutes ago. The paramedic frowns, clearly skeptical, but there's no time to argue. Emily is lifted onto a stretcher, her eyes fluttering as she fights to stay conscious. The medical team moves with practiced urgency, wheeling her out of the room toward the nearest exit. Hayes follows, Rex at his side, without needing a command. The crowd outside parts again, their whispers now tinged with concern rather than irritation. As the stretcher passes, Rex lets out a sharp bark, then falls silent, his eyes tracking Emily's every movement. Hayes feels the weight of that bark like a punch. It's no longer a warning, it's a plea. The ambulance's siren wails piercingly, tearing through the New York morning as it speeds away from JFK Airport toward Mount Sinai Hospital. Inside, Emily Carter lies motionless on the stretcher, her face ghostly pale, her weak hands still clutching her belly. The paramedics work frantically. One checks her blood pressure, another sets up an IV, their voices urgent but professional. Pressure's crashing! Fetal heart rate's weak! Prep oxygen! One shouts, eyes glued to the monitor. Michael Hayes, defying all TSA protocol, isn't back at the airport. He's in the security team's SUV, hands gripping the steering wheel, eyes locked on the ambulance ahead. In the passenger seat, Rex, the German Shepherd, sits upright, his sharp gaze piercing through the windshield as if he can see the fragile thread tying Emily to life. Hayes doesn't know why he's following. All he knows is that Rex's eyes, the way they refuse to leave Emily, have drawn him into a responsibility he can't turn away from. New York traffic is a nightmare, but the ambulance's siren carves a path, and Hayes stays close behind. His mind swirls with questions. Rex wasn't trained to detect illness. He was taught to find bombs, drugs, weapons. So, why did he bark relentlessly at a pregnant woman? Hayes recalls that story from a Quantico training session about dogs detecting cancer or seizures through body odor. At the time, he'd thought it was science fiction, but now, with Rex beside him, he's starting to believe there are things machines will never comprehend. Mike, what are you doing? Sarah's voice crackles through the radio. The boss finds out you left the airport. They're not going to be happy. Hayes lets out a dry chuckle, not responding. He knows he's breaking the rules, but the look in Emily's eyes as she collapsed in the screening room, the way she clutched her belly as if she knew something was wrong, made it impossible for him to stay put. And Rex? Rex is the reason he's still driving, despite everything. Mount Sinai Hospital looms ahead, its neon lights flickering on the glass building. The ambulance screeches to a halt at the emergency entrance, paramedics leaping out to rush Emily's stretcher through the automatic doors. Hayes parks hastily, opening the door for Rex. The dog jumps down, nose raised, eyes fixed on the entrance where Emily disappeared. Another TSA agent, called to take Rex back to the airport, approaches from behind. "Mike, I'll handle the dog. You need to get back and file the report." But Hayes shakes his head. "No, he stays with me." Inside the emergency ward, the air is thick with the scent of antiseptic and urgency. White-coated doctors rush back and forth, the beeping of machines blending with the crackle of radio calls. Emily is wheeled straight into the operating room, where a gray-haired senior doctor swiftly assesses her. "Internal bleeding, fetal heart rate barely detectable, prep for emergency surgery," he orders, his voice low but commanding. A nurse turns to Hayes, the only person in a TSA uniform standing in the hallway. "Are you family?" Hayes shakes his head. "No, I just brought her here." The doctor glances at Rex, lying still outside the ER doors, his eyes fixed on the frosted glass. "Working dog?" he flagged her. Hayes nods, offering no further explanation. The doctor doesn't press, only gives a slight nod before returning to the operating room. But his brief glance says it all. He's never seen a medical emergency sparked by a dog. Hayes sinks into a hard plastic chair in the hallway, Rex settling at his feet. The dog doesn't move, his gaze locked on the door, ears perked as if picking up something no one else can hear. The hospital corridor buzzes with activity, but the area outside the ER feels cloaked in an odd silence. Passers-by glance curiously at Hayes and Rex, but no one asks questions. In this place, where life and death are separated by a single door, words often feel superfluous. Inside the operating room, the surgical team works at a breakneck pace, honed by years on the edge of life and death. A nurse shouts, "Ruptured blood vessel in the abdominal cavity. Prep blood bags now." The lead surgeon, Dr. Davis, realizes Emily's condition is worse than anticipated. She has a rare uterine malformation, causing silent tearing and bleeding. There were no obvious symptoms, nothing airport scanners could detect. A few more minutes delay, and neither Emily nor her baby would have survived. Hayes knows none of this. He sits, hands clasped tightly, eyes glued to the door. Rex suddenly lifts his head, ears twitching as if catching an inaudible sound. Hayes leans down, resting a hand on the dog's head. "What do you know that I don't, huh?" he whispers. Rex doesn't respond, just meets his gaze with eyes so deep they seem to say, "Trust me." An hour passes, then two. The operating room's light on the digital board glows a steady, cold red. Hayes doesn't leave his seat, doesn't check his phone, doesn't think about the report waiting back at the airport. His mind is on Emily, her helpless expression. And Rex, the dog who pulled them both into a fight he still doesn't fully understand. A nurse rushes out for blood bags, another doctor hurries in, but no one speaks to Hayes. Every footstep, every sound feels like a pulse in his chest. Then, abruptly, the operating room light switches off. The door swings open. A young doctor, her scrub stained with faint blood, steps out, her face weary but relieved. She looks at Hayes, then at Rex, and offers a small smile. "They're okay," she says, her voice quiet but firm. "Mother and baby both made it, but 10 more minutes. I don't want to think about it." Hayes exhales, as if releasing a boulder from his chest. Rex stands, his tail giving a slight wag, eyes still fixed on the operating room, as if needing one final confirmation. Hayes says nothing, just leans down to pat the dog's head gently. He knows, in this moment, everything has changed, not just for Emily, but for him. The operating room door at Mount Sinai Hospital closes, leaving the hallway bathed in soft yellow light and an odd stillness. Michael Hayes sits on the hard plastic chair, his back against the wall, hands clasped tightly as if holding on to something intangible. At his feet, Rex, the German shepherd, lies still, his eyes fixed on the operating room door, where Emily Carter and her baby just crossed the line between life and death. The sound of nurses' footsteps, the beeping of machines, and the murmurs of passers-by seem to dissolve in this space. For Hayes, all that remains is Rex's gaze, a look that pulled him into a story he was never prepared to face. A young nurse emerges, carrying a tray of instruments, and glances at Hayes and Rex. She offers a faint smile, a rare gesture in the tense atmosphere of the ER. "You're the one who brought her in, right? That dog, he's really something." Hayes nods, silent. He doesn't know what to say. How could he explain that a working dog, trained to detect bombs and drugs, saved 2 lives in a way no machine could comprehend? Dr. Davis, the lead surgeon, appears shortly after. He peels off his gloves, wipes the sweat from his brow, and approaches Hayes. She had a ruptured blood vessel from a rare uterine malformation, he says, his voice low but clear. No obvious symptoms, no way to detect it without deep examination. 10 more minutes, and neither the mother nor the baby would have had a chance. He pauses, looking down at Rex, whose ears are perked. I've been in this field for 30 years, never seen a case start with a dog. You and that shepherd, you're the miracle today. Hayes lowers his head, not out of humility, but because he feels a surge of emotion he can't name. He's not one to get emotional. His TSA job taught him to control feelings, follow protocol, and ignore the crowd's stares. But today, Emily's helpless look as she was wheeled into surgery, the way Rex refused to leave her side, made him realize there are things far beyond the rules he's learned. Rex gives a slight wag of his tail, as if sensing a shift in the air. Hayes stands, patting the dog's head gently. You did good, buddy, he whispers. Rex meets his gaze, his eyes deep, as if to say his job isn't entirely done. Hayes pulls out his phone, checking it. A message from Sarah. Boss is asking where you are. Report needs signing ASAP. Everything okay? He replies curtly. Fine. Back tomorrow morning. He doesn't leave the hospital, not out of duty, but because of a feeling that this story needs him to stay, at least until he sees Emily again. The following morning, Hayes returns to the hospital early. He couldn't sleep the previous night, not out of worry, but because the image of Emily on the stretcher, the glaring red light of the operating room, and Rex's piercing gaze haunted him every time he closed his eyes. Rex walks beside him, no leash needed, his steps steady like those of a friend who understands him completely. As they reach the hallway of the recovery ward, Rex pauses, nose raised, then turns directly toward a room with a nameplate reading, Emily Carter. The door is slightly ajar. A young nurse spots Hayes, smiles, and gestures for him to enter. Rex stops at the threshold, sitting down, his eyes fixed inside, as if sensing his role is complete. Hayes steps in and sees Emily on the bed, her face still pale, but her eyes now alive with vitality. She wears a hospital gown, her hair loosely tied, and beside her is a small crib where a baby girl sleeps, her tiny hands twitching faintly in a pink blanket. Emily looks up, meeting Hayes' gaze. She smiles, a weak but warm smile. You're the one from the airport, aren't you? She asks, her voice hoarse but clear. Hayes nods, lingering near the door, suddenly feeling awkward. He's used to confronting suspects, not navigating moments like this. Thank you, Emily says, her eyes shining with sincerity. And the dog. If it weren't for him, me and my little girl. She trails off, glancing at the baby, her voice catching. The doctor said I had a tear that was nearly impossible to detect. I had no idea. I just felt tired, but I thought it was because of the pregnancy. How did the dog know? Hayes shakes his head, not answering immediately. He steps closer, looking at the baby in the crib. I don't know, he says, his voice low. Rex, he wasn't trained for this. But yesterday, he wouldn't let me ignore you. He briefly recounts the previous morning, Rex's barking, the security team's skepticism, and the moment he decided to take her to the private screening room despite the doubtful stares. He doesn't embellish, sticking to the facts. Emily listens, her hand gently touching the crib. When Hayes finishes, she pulls a small, folded piece of paper from the bedside drawer, its slanted handwriting fresh. I wrote this for the dog, she says, her voice tinged with embarrassment. It sounds silly, I know, but I want you to read it to him. Even if he doesn't understand, I believe he'll feel it. Hayes takes the paper and opens it. The handwritten note, ink still fresh, reads, Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for your unwavering gaze, for pulling me from the darkness. You're my hero, even with 4 legs and no words. He folds it back, saying nothing, and signals Rex to come in. The dog steps forward, sitting by the bed, his gentle eyes on Emily. She reaches out, lightly touching his head, whispering, Thank you. A doctor enters, surprised to see Rex in the room, but upon seeing Emily's expression, he says nothing, only nodding at Hayes. She's recovering well, he says. The baby's healthy, 2.8 kilos. But what happened yesterday? I still can't explain it. That dog saved 2 lives. Hayes nods, a weight lifting from his heart. He leaves the room, Rex following, the dog's eyes glancing back at Emily one last time. In the hallway, Hayes pulls out his phone and snaps a photo. Not of Emily, not of the baby, but of Rex sitting in front of the recovery room door, the yellow light illuminating his black and gold coat. To Hayes, that photo is a reminder of things far beyond any protocol he's ever learned. A week later, Hayes returns to work at JFK Airport. The baggage scanners hum smoothly, the passenger crowds swell, and the intercom drones on as usual. Rex lies at his feet, his eyes scanning the flow of people, his head held high in the poised manner of a well-trained working dog. But Hayes notices something different. Whenever a pregnant woman passes by, Rex lingers a moment longer, not barking or growling, just listening to something no one else can hear. In his official report, Hayes writes succinctly, "Unusual reaction from working dog led to the discovery of a medical emergency. Coordinated response saved lives." He doesn't tell the full story. He doesn't need anyone to believe it. For him, Emily, the baby, and Rex's gaze are enough. One afternoon, as New York skies soften after a rain, Hayes receives a message from an unknown number. A photo appears, a baby girl with round eyes, her tiny hand clutching a small fabric ring. Below it, a caption, "Thank you and Rex. My girl and I are here because of you, hoping to meet again one day to say a proper thank you. Emily." Hayes looks at the photo of the baby, with Rex sitting beside him, head tilted as if studying it too. He lets out a rare chuckle amidst the long shift. That evening, Hayes takes Rex for a walk around the airport. A gentle breeze blows, and the runway lights sweep across the sky, casting faint, ethereal streaks. Rex walks slowly, occasionally glancing back as if waiting for him. At a quiet corner, Hayes stops, pulling Emily's note from his pocket. He reads it again, silently, then tucks it away. He thinks of the baby, of a life that began with a dog's unspoken gaze, and wonders, will she ever know, when she grows up, that she was saved by an instinct no one can explain? Hayes isn't one for daydreams, but from that day on, he starts noticing the seemingly ordinary things a little more. The smiles of passengers, the glances of colleagues, and, above all, Rex, the four-legged friend who taught him that, sometimes, the right thing comes from a silent look. Ladies and gentlemen, the story of Rex, Hayes, and Emily is more than an unexpected moment amid the hustle of JFK Airport. It's a profound reminder of the value of listening, of trusting in things that cannot be measured, and of courage in the face of life and death decisions. A German shepherd with an unwavering gaze proved that sometimes life doesn't begin with a cry, but with the quiet power of a miraculous instinct. We hope this story touches your heart, inspiring you to cherish the simple things, slow down, and carry kindness with you wherever life takes you. Thank you for listening.